It was a quiet Thursday morning when the email arrived, buried between spreadsheets and end-of-quarter reminders. Hannah sat at her desk in the accounting office, the hum of fluorescent lights above her, coffee half-finished beside the keyboard. She clicked the message, expecting a routine update from Greg about dinner or bills. Instead, she read a few lines that drained the air from the room. He wrote that he had fallen for someone else, that he would be taking the camper van they had just financed, and that she could handle the repayments since it was in her name. For a long second, she stared at the numbers on the screen as if they might shift back into cents. $35,000, 5 years at 7.5% interest. Her checking balance had been $21,400 just last night. Around her, coworkers laughed about someone's promotion. The smell of reheated lunch drifted from the break room, and her monitor kept flashing reminders to submit expense reports. She minimized the email and straightened her posture, forcing her face into the neutral calm of someone who had everything under control. Her pulse beat like a hidden alarm. She opened a new spreadsheet, typed a few random digits, and tried to breathe as if nothing had changed. The noise of office chatter grew distant. Behind the blur of data, she saw the pieces of her life rearranging themselves without her consent. She had always believed love was the anchor that kept life stable. Now she understood that trust was just another form of credit, and that discipline was the only asset that never lost value. As the cursor blinked on an empty cell, she decided she would balance this debt the way she balanced every book in her life, quietly and completely. The first loan notice came 3 weeks later, printed in bold black letters across a white envelope that looked harmless until she read the number. $742 is due on the 15th. The bank listed her as the sole borrower. She remembered the day Greg's loan application was denied because of his credit score, barely scraping 580. He had smiled and said they were a team, that he would handle the payments while she handled the paperwork. Now the payments were hers alone, and his number had vanished from her phone like he had never existed. Each morning she dressed for work as if nothing had happened. She ironed her shirts, packed lunches, and told Ryan to finish his homework. At the office, she typed invoices with mechanical precision, avoiding questions about her weekend or the missing ring on her finger. At night, she sat at the kitchen table, balancing her checkbook, watching the balance shrink as the first automatic payment cleared. She skipped breakfast, forgot lunch, and drank coffee to quiet the dizziness. The silence in the house felt heavier than debt. One afternoon, she collapsed at her desk, waking later to the hum of hospital machines and a doctor's calm explanation about stress-related ulcers. He said her blood pressure was climbing, that her body had been living in a storm. She stared at the ceiling tiles, listening to the faint rhythm of the monitor, and thought about all the promises people make when they have nothing to lose. In finance, a promise without proof is just a liability. In love, it's the same. When Ryan visited, his small hand wrapped around hers, she forced a smile and told him she would be fine. Inside, a new resolve formed. She would live carefully, not to punish Greg, but to protect the one thing he could never manage: stability. Her life would not end in a hospital room or under a pile of unpaid bills. It would continue, disciplined and deliberate, for her child and for her own quiet sense of dignity. Ryan started to notice the changes before anyone said a word. He watched his mother stir her coffee without tasting it, watched the mail pile up unopened on the counter. One night at dinner, he set down his fork and looked straight at her. He asked if his father was still away for work or if he was gone for good. Hannah froze for a moment, then said she wasn't sure. Ryan nodded quietly, like someone confirming a fact he already knew. He said sometimes people lie when they're scared, and sometimes they leave because they can't face the truth. Later that night, he climbed into her bed, his voice small but steady. He asked if telling the truth always hurts. She told him that lies hurt longer. He thought for a while, then said that maybe truth and justice were the same thing, only justice takes longer to show up. She looked at him, seeing the same calm eyes she had seen in her own reflection when she used to believe life was fair. His words didn't sound like a child's. They sounded like something born from watching too much pain in silence. A week later, he came to her with his old phone, the one Greg had set up years ago with a family tracking app. He showed her a small dot moving across a map near a lake 2 towns away. He said he didn't want to find his father to fight him, only to understand why people run from the ones who love them. Hannah felt a rush of emotion she couldn't name, pride and sorrow tangled together. That night, she sat beside her son, realizing justice was not a battle but a balance. Ryan wasn't teaching her how to get even. He was teaching her how to be whole. True strength, she thought, begins not with anger but with respect for what you still have, the truth, your child, and the quiet dignity of refusing to hate. Hannah made her first appointment with an attorney on a gray Tuesday morning. The office smelled faintly of coffee and paper, the kind of place where decisions changed lives. She laid out every document she had kept neatly filed since the day she married Greg. The attorney listened, nodding, then explained that Greg's withdrawal of $20,000 from their joint savings and his use of the camper van without consent met the criteria for theft under Texas Penal Code Section 31-03. The words theft of marital assets sounded both cold and correct. It was no longer just heartbreak. It was evidence. She spent the next week gathering records, old emails, and the insurance statement that still listed her as the only policyholder. Ryan helped after school, printing copies and labeling folders with his small, careful handwriting. They worked quietly, like partners on a project. She called the bank to freeze any remaining joint funds and requested transaction histories that showed each withdrawal Greg had made after leaving. Each printout was another line of proof that discipline could rebuild what carelessness destroyed. The weight she carried was still there, but it felt different now. It had structure. When the attorney drafted the civil complaint, Hannah read every line twice. The document listed asset recovery, repayment of the $20,000, and monthly child support for Ryan. As she signed her name, her hand trembled for a moment, not from fear but recognition. She realized silence had been her only real mistake. Letting Greg's choices go unchallenged would have meant agreeing with them. Allowing wrong to continue in peace was its own form of betrayal. She left the courthouse that afternoon, holding her copy of the filed complaint in a simple folder. The sun was bright, almost harsh after the dim hallways. She paused on the courthouse steps, feeling the heat on her face. For the first time in months, her breath came steady and full. Justice did not bring her joy. It brought order, and that was enough. She walked toward her car, the folder pressed against her chest, knowing that dignity was not something anyone could steal. It was something you defended, one signature at a time. The GPS led them to a quiet campground near a lake 2 towns away. Pines swayed above rows of parked vans, and smoke from a nearby fire drifted through the air. Hannah parked a few spaces back and watched Greg standing beside the camper van that still bore her name on the registration sticker. A patrol car had arrived before her, lights flashing softly in the daylight. The officers were speaking with Greg, who looked confused, pointing toward Hannah's van as if disbelief could undo the evidence. He tried to explain that it was not theft because they were still married. The officer corrected him. The complaint had been filed after the divorce papers were processed. Legally, they were strangers. Hannah walked closer, her expression composed, her voice level. She told Greg that he had withdrawn $20,000 from their joint account and left her with a $35,000 loan. She said she was not there for an argument, but for accountability. He avoided her eyes, mumbling about mistakes and needing time. She reminded him that time did not erase a signature or a debt. His silence was louder than any apology. Mandy sat in a folding chair nearby, arms crossed, her face turned toward Ryan with a defiant smirk. When she announced she was pregnant, Ryan's gaze sharpened. He asked quietly when the baby was due. Her answer came too fast, and the math did not fit. He looked back at her with the calm precision of a child who had already learned to separate truth from performance. The officers exchanged a glance, noting her hesitation. A car pulled up behind them, and two older figures stepped out. Mandy's parents. Their faces were pale with shock. They confronted her with what they had learned from Hannah's earlier call. Lies folded into lies, and the tension collapsed into silence. Greg lowered his head, the weight of reality finally pressing down. Hannah did not gloat or look away. She simply said that justice was never about anger. It was about restoring balance. Then she thanked the officers for their time, took Ryan's hand, and walked back toward the car. The sunlight broke through the clouds, and for a brief moment, everything felt still, measured, and right. The court ruling came 3 months later, clear and firm. Greg was ordered to repay the $20,000 he had taken and to send $500 a month in child support. Hannah sold the camper van for $28,000, cleared the remaining debt, and kept $12,400 in savings. For the first time in a long while, her balance sheet matched her peace of mind. Her health returned slowly. She slept through the night, cooked real meals again, and walked to work instead of rushing. The office felt different now, quieter inside her head. One weekend, she bought herself a simple $400 watch, stainless steel with a clean white face. She liked the weight of it, the sound of the ticking second hand. It reminded her that time could be both a wound and a cure, depending on how you lived it. Ryan joined a robotics club at school, his laughter filling the kitchen again as he talked about circuits and plans. Their evenings were calm, the kind that healed without effort. Hannah learned that revenge fades, but integrity endures. True victory, she thought, is not punishing someone else. It is choosing who you become after the damage is done. Justice begins quietly, in the choice to stay honest and keep moving forward. Maybe you have faced your own kind of betrayal, the quiet kind that empties a room without a sound. Maybe someone took more than money from you. Maybe they took your trust or your time. I want to know how you found the strength to stand again. Did it come from forgiveness, from work, or from simply refusing to give up? We all carry losses that no one else can count. What matters is how we balance them. Justice is not revenge. It is remembering who you are and choosing to live in truth, even when no one is watching.